Have you ever wondered what it feels like to grow up in a home where your very presence feels like a mistake? Not shouted at, not beaten, simply unwelcome. A sigh when you walk into the room. A shift in the air when you speak. These are not just moments, they are silent verdicts. And for many children, this quiet verdict becomes the foundation of an entire identity: I am not wanted. Psychologists call this the deepest wound of childhood rejection. Carl Jung once wrote that, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. When love is withheld or poisoned by resentment, the child does not just feel unloved, they grow up believing they are unworthy of love itself. That is the story we are about to unravel, the hidden psychology of the hated child, and how this shadow follows them into adulthood. Picture a child at the dinner table. The clinking of forks, the hum of conversation, the laughter shared between siblings. And yet, one seat feels different. The boy sits quietly, eyes lowered, moving food across his plate as if to erase his presence. His sister's words bring smiles, his brother's grades invite praise. But when he speaks, the room stiffens. Silence descends, heavy and sharp. His words are not mistakes, they are offenses. This is how the hated child is born, not always through open cruelty, but through subtle exclusion, sighs, or glances that carry more weight than words. Psychologists call this scapegoating, when one child absorbs the family's unspoken tensions. Carl Jung might describe it as the projection of the family's shadow, the unwanted parts of themselves placed onto the child. In that silence, the child learns the most devastating lesson: my presence is a disruption, not a belonging. Picture a child at the dinner table. The clinking of forks, the hum of conversation, the laughter shared between siblings. And yet, one seat feels different. The boy sits quietly, eyes lowered, moving food across his plate as if to erase his presence. His sister's words bring smiles, his brother's grades invite praise. But when he speaks, the room stiffens. Silence descends, heavy and sharp. His words are not mistakes, they are offenses. This is how the hated child is born, not always through open cruelty, but through subtle exclusion, sighs, or glances that carry more weight than words. Psychologists call this scapegoating, when one child absorbs the family's unspoken tensions. Carl Jung might describe it as the projection of the family's shadow, the unwanted parts of themselves placed onto the child. In that silence, the child learns the most devastating lesson: my presence is a disruption, not a belonging. There is a world of difference between feeling unloved and believing you are unworthy of love. One is a condition, the other becomes an identity. The unloved child still hopes that affection might arrive tomorrow. But the hated child learns to silence that hope, to internalize rejection as the truth of who they are. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, wrote that a child's first bonds form the blueprint for every future relationship. When those bonds are warm, the child grows with confidence. When they are cold or hostile, the child does not conclude, my parent is flawed. Instead, they whisper to themselves, I must be flawed. Carl Jung warned that what is denied in childhood sinks into the unconscious and shapes destiny. And so, the hated child carries forward not just wounds but a distorted mirror of self, one that whispers through the years, I am not enough. I do not deserve love. For the hated child, life inside the family is not just painful, it feels like playing a game where the rules are stacked against them. They watch as siblings are celebrated for the smallest victories, a drawing hung on the fridge, a story told at the table, a report card praised with pride. And then they notice the shift. When it's their turn, the applause fades. The tone changes. Their efforts are measured against a different scale, one they can never seem to meet. Psychologists have found that children exposed to sibling favoritism are far more likely to struggle with depression and anxiety in adulthood. The nervous system learns to anticipate rejection, even in moments of potential joy. Jung would call this the shadow wound, the buried belief that someone else will always be more worthy of love than you. In this rigged game of comparison, the hated child learns not just that they lose, but that they were never allowed to win. When love feels conditional, or worse, withheld entirely, the hated child learns to survive by wearing masks. These are not chosen identities but armor forged in silence. Some become perfectionists, chasing flawless achievement as if trophies could purchase love. They climb higher, run faster, work harder, yet no matter the applause, it never feels enough. Others turn into people pleasers, reshaping themselves into whatever version will gain approval, terrified that saying no might cost them the fragile thread of connection. And then there are the rebels, those who decide if they are to be rejected anyway, they will reject first, wielding defiance as protection. Psychologists call these compensatory strategies. Jung might see them as masks of the persona, necessary for survival, but dangerous when mistaken for the self. Beneath perfection, compliance, or rebellion lies the same wound, a child still asking, in silence, would I be loved if I were simply me? Not every hated child grows up in a visibly broken home. Some families look perfect from the outside, birthday parties, vacations, Sunday dinners filled with laughter. Neighbors see harmony. Relatives admire the smiles in photographs. But beneath the surface, one child feels like a ghost in their own house. This is the cruelest form of rejection, invisibility wrapped in normalcy. There are no bruises to prove it, no shouting matches to point to. Instead, there are subtle cues, less eye contact, less patience, a missing warmth that siblings seem to receive with ease. When the child finally wonders, am I imagining this? The family's polished image reinforces the doubt. Psychologists describe this as a form of gaslighting without intent, a distortion so subtle the child begins to mistrust their own memory and emotions. Jung might say the family projects its unlived life onto one scapegoated soul. And so the child grows up carrying not just pain, but confusion, maybe the problem is me. The hated child does not leave their childhood behind, they carry it like an echo that follows into every corner of adulthood. In love, they may find themselves drawn to partners who withhold affection, mistaking neglect for familiarity. Rejection feels almost magnetic, because the nervous system has been trained to expect it. In work, success rarely brings peace. The promotion, the degree, the recognition, none of it silences the inner voice whispering, "You're still not enough." This is the seed of imposter syndrome, the gnawing fear that their worth is borrowed and could be revoked at any moment. Inside, the harshest critic is not a boss or a lover, but the internalized voice of childhood. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the hated child, fate often looks like repetition, until awareness breaks the cycle. Rejection is not only an emotional wound, it is a biological assault. When a child feels unwanted, their nervous system interprets it as danger. Cortisol, the body's stress hormone, floods their bloodstream. Over time, this constant alarm reshapes the brain itself. Neuroscientists have found heightened activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, in those who experienced early rejection. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for regulating emotions, becomes less active. The result is a body wired for hypervigilance, scanning every interaction for signs of abandonment, overreacting to minor slights, struggling to trust moments of peace. Studies using fMRI show that social rejection lights up the same neural pathways as physical pain. To the brain, being unwanted hurts as much as a broken bone. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." The hated child grows up not only aching emotionally but living in a body trained to expect hurt. Here lies the paradox. The same child who grew up feeling unwanted often develops an uncanny ability to sense others. They read the room before words are spoken. They notice the shift in tone, the flicker in someone's eyes, the silence heavy with meaning. What began as survival, scanning for rejection, can transform into a gift. Psychologists call this heightened attunement. In healing, it becomes empathy, intuition, and creative depth. Many artists, leaders, and healers were once the rejected ones. Maya Angelou, who endured a childhood of neglect, later wrote with such clarity about human pain that her words gave millions a voice. Carl Jung believed that wounds, when faced, become sources of strength. He described this as the archetype of the wounded healer. The hated child, when no longer defined by rejection, often emerges with extraordinary compassion. What once was pain becomes the very tool to heal others. The story of the hated child does not have to end with repetition. Cycles of rejection echo across generations, unless someone chooses to stop. Healing begins with awareness, the courage to name the wound, I was the unwanted one. Naming turns vague shame into clear truth, and truth is the first step toward freedom. Psychologists call this process reparenting, offering to yourself the love and care you were once denied. It means learning to set boundaries with those who still wound you, practicing self-compassion in moments of failure, and building what researchers call earned secure attachment through healthy relationships. Journaling memories, speaking with a therapist, creating art from pain, all are ways of reclaiming authorship. As Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. In this choice, the hated child shifts from victim of the past to author of a new destiny. Return now to that image, the child at the dinner table, staring at the plate, wishing to vanish. Perhaps that child is still inside you. Perhaps they are still waiting for someone to look them in the eyes and say, "You belong." Healing does not mean erasing the past. It means meeting that inner child with the love they never received. It means whispering what no one else did, you are worthy. You are enough. You are loved, not for what you achieve, not for how well you please, not for how fiercely you rebel, but simply because you exist, Carl Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For the hated child, that privilege begins when they are finally embraced by compassion, sometimes from others, but most importantly from themselves. The invitation is simple: look inward, see the child, and say yes. If you've ever felt like the unwanted child, know this: your story matters. And healing begins the moment it is spoken. I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments below. Your words may be the light someone else is searching for. And if this message resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Here, we explore the hidden truths of psychology, the wisdom of Carl Jung, and the paths of healing from invisible wounds. Don't miss the next chapter, because every step toward awareness is a step toward freedom.